American heavy cruiser designs of the 1930s and early 1940s had a number of distinct stages. The New Orleans class and the one off Wichita represented the efforts to stick to the naval treaty displacements. Then you had the Baltimores, which reflected what you needed to carry the fairly standard 8-inch armament of a heavy cruiser, along with the additional sensors, systems and anti-aircraft guns needed by a World War II-era warship. But fundamentally, it was a treaty cruiser with the displacement limit removed. Then you had the interesting sideshow that was the Alaskas, the intermediate cruiser killer class that, in role at least, almost perfectly mirrored the idea behind the Invincible class 35 years earlier. But during the Alaska's design phase, a number of alternate options using 8-inch guns had been considered, using both the standard 3 triple turrets and another option with 4 such emplacements. Then, in 1942 and 43, as the Guadalcanal and then the Solomons campaigns ground on, it was felt that 6-inch gun cruisers did have the rate of fire, but not necessarily the range or individual shell power needed to deal with all comers. Whilst the 8-inch gun did have the latter two, it couldn't keep up the shell output needed to quickly put down small craft or suppress larger capital ships. In May 1943, therefore, I like to imagine some Bureau of Ordnance employee, in a rare moment of usefulness, bursting into the Bureau of Ships announcing, "Your saviour has arrived!" For in his hand, he bore proposals for a rapid-fire 8-inch gun mount. This would be achieved by a number of means, including instituting the ability to load at all angles and the use of a German-style sliding breech block and brass cartridge system for the gun and its ammunition. This, along with the loading mechanisms, would require a substantial increase in weight and space over the previous system. Although this wasn't realised at first, it would turn out that the new turrets would actually weigh about 450 tons, as compared to the approximately 300 tons of the Baltimore's weapons. This, in turn, meant that an armament of 9 such guns would weigh half a turret more than a ship with 4 conventional turrets. But, since each turret could fire about 3 times as fast, a cruiser equipped with 12 of the regular guns could put 40 rounds downrange per minute, whilst a 9-gun rapid-fire equipped ship could send 90 rounds after a target in the same time. Therefore, a single rapid-fire equipped ship was worth, at least in terms of overall firepower, just over 2 theoretical larger 12-gun vessels, or 3 Baltimores. Work thus began in mid-1943 on a brand new design, since adapting the existing Oregon City subclass hull was quickly shown not to be viable. The ship was, however, largely viewed as a platform for the new guns. No increase in speed was sought, nor was there any increase in the anti-aircraft armament, although the heavy anti-aircraft guns were rearranged to give the, as designed, 40mm Bofors mounts better fields of fire. Belt armour was also not increased in thickness, despite the introduction of the super heavy 8-inch shell. Any improvements to armour were poured into improved subdivision, deck protection to better guard against bombs, and in extending the belt to fully cover the extended magazines that the ships would require. 3 ships would be completed out of the 12 initially planned: USS Des Moines, Salem, and Newport News. With the ships eventually coming in at just over 17,000 tons standard displacement, they were armed with 9 of the 8-inch rapid-fire guns in 3 triple turrets, a pair superfiring forward and 1 aft. 12 5-inch 38 caliber heavy AA guns were arranged in twin mounts, 2 per side and 1 at each end superfiring over the main armament. As planned, the ships would have also carried 12 quadruple 40mm Bofors, but due to delays in manufacturing the main guns, by the time the ships were actually laid down in 1945, these were replaced on a like-for-like basis with twin 3-inch 50 caliber mounts for a total of 24 guns, 4 mounts per side amidships, 2 at the stern next to each other, and 2 on the centerline forward, including a very bold mount that was placed right at the bow. As completed, 12 20mm Oerlikons in 6 twin mounts were also installed. Armour consisted of a belt with a maximum thickness of 6 inches, 3.5 inches of deck armour with a 1-inch bomb deck slightly higher, 8 inches of armour on the turret faces, and 6.3 inches on the barbettes. 120,000 shaft horsepower drove 4 shafts for a top speed of 33 knots. As may be surmised from the year the ships were laid down, they would not see war service, launching in 1946, 47 and 48 respectively, completing in 1948 in the Des Moines case and 1949 in the case of the other two. Fairly soon after entering service, the 20mm mounts were removed, as they were seen by this point as largely pointless increases in weight and manning requirements. And after some thought, the foremost 3-inch mount was also removed, as it tended to spend most of its time being drenched by thrown-up sea spray, a move that came much to the relief of whoever had been unlucky enough to have previously been assigned to that particular role. The number of 3-inch guns would gradually drop more and more as other systems were added to the ships, and they became most useful as flagships due to their size and speed, since the battleships were mostly in mothballs. Only Newport News would actually get to use its main guns in anger during the Vietnam War, but all 3 ships survived a surprisingly long time, given that they remained property of the US Navy and were the last of the gun ships in many ways. Des Moines was decommissioned in 1961 and placed in reserve, almost making it back out again alongside the Iowas, but remaining mothballed due to the costs of modernisation. She was removed from the reserve list in 1993, but was only sold for scrap in 2005 after a protracted attempt to turn her into a museum ship. Whilst serving actively for the longest time, only leaving active service in 1975, Newport News would also be the first to go, being scrapped directly in 1993. USS Salem, though, turned out to be a ship of somewhat contradictions. She was the last heavy cruiser to enter service in 1949, but she was also the first of the class to be taken out of service in 1959 after only a decade at sea. But thanks to this, and some effective mothballing, she was able to head over to Massachusetts in 1994, where she remains as a museum ship today.
That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. If you have a comment or suggestion for a ship to review, let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to comment on the pinned post for dry dock questions.